Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Art of TradeStation. I'm David Russell, VP of Market Intelligence at TradeStation Group. Today, we're going to be talking about earnings season, how to make the most of earnings season using some of the tools and functionality built into TradeStation. All right, first, I need to read some important disclosures and information. The following presentation is for educational purposes only. All symbols and trading ideas discussed by the instructors are for demonstrational purposes only and are not recommendations. This presentation is not an offer or solicitation of any kind in any jurisdiction where any TradeStation affiliate is not authorized to do business, including but not limited to Hong Kong and Japan. Active trading is not suitable for everyone. Options and futures trading carries a high degree of risk and is not suitable for all traders. Please read the disclosure information handout or the electronic disclosure information available on the TradeStation website. Okay, folks, it's great to be with everyone. Today we're going to just go through multiple things about TradeStation and some of the great tools we have for earnings season. First, I want to point out a few things that we have in terms of the things that I publish. I want to show you guys. Where's my web browser? I'm going to bring up TradeStation. Here it is. Good. Sorry that. All right. So basically, if you go to the TradeStation website, I write for the Market Insights blog on TradeStation. If you go to TradeStation, you go to Learn, and then you go to Market Insights. This is the blog that I mostly write for. And now what we want to do is, there's some interesting new functionality that we have added to TradeStation now. I'm not sure how many of you guys know, but we have an app store where there's all kinds of tools you can, use. Some of them, have a subscription fee. Some of them do not. And we recently added a new tool that gives some really powerful functionality for earnings season. So there's a link to it in this article right here. Earnings season has begun. Here's how to make the most of it. And down here, there's a link to it. You can also go to the trading app store if you want to see it. This is called Next Earnings Date. And this is it right here. So what you're going to do is you're going to actually go to this on the trading app store. And one thing though is that for some people, it's been causing this error when you have to clear your cache and browsing history. So just be aware of that. If this doesn't work for you, I'm going to share the link with it right now in the actual chat. I'm actually going to have to share a few others. All right, so this is the app that you're going to install. We also have, let me go to this other, we also have a zip file that contains a whole bunch of special custom indicators that we're going to be sharing with you guys here today. And we're going to get to that, but I want to let you guys get started and start navigating to those pages. So if you're in the trading app store, you're going to click on install. And then, you're already a client, you log in, and it's going to bring you into a special secure login. Put in your information here. Now, I've already installed this, so I'm not going to go through this whole process. But what will happen is it's going to send you an email, and it'll say, do you want to install this, all that sort of stuff. In a certain amount of time, it'll send you an email. You can then launch an update. And now we're going to go to TradeStation, and I'm going to show you what this actually looks like when I go into TradeStation. If you go here to your apps and you go to Trading App Store Updates, at a certain point in time, this thing called Next Earnings Date RS will be available to you, and you will launch. So it might take a day, might take a few hours. I'm not sure. I installed it twice, so that's why it says version 2 for me, but it's the same thing. I removed one and redid it. So anyway, this is what it's going to look like when you actually get the thing working. This is the actual tool that we're talking about installing. So we're going to get back to this in 1 second. I also want to show you the second link I shared. Can you please push the files again? Okay, I'm just going to, maybe people didn't see that, but here are the links. Okay, so the other one is there's this zip file that I shared. And if you go to the zip file, this is what it's going to look like. It's just going to have this ELD file in it. So you're going to want to unzip it. And then when you do that, now this contains, I think, 11 TradeStation indicators. These are custom indicators that I've created that I'm, some of the cool kind of functionality we can share with you. So if you double click on this is inside of the zip file, and you double click on it, it's going to start, it's going to bring this in, and you're going to hit next. Now, I already have these in my system, so I'm not going to install them. Some of you guys who've been on my other webinars probably have some of these indicators, but not all of them, because some of them are new. So you're going to hit finish. It's going to say, do you want to install them? A few other things, hit yes, 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 and it'll come through. So that's how you actually proceed with that. Okay. So I want to start off first of all by saying how excited I am about this, because this is actually something that is really powerful, and it's something that we just kind of were able to deploy, and that's an exciting thing, which is we have some really good data on when earnings come out. And the great thing is it's not just when they come out, but we also know like when the earnings dates are confirmed or not. And that's really, a great thing to actually be aware of, because there actually is, if you've been around for a while, and you'll notice that people say, oh, this company's maybe going to report that week, and then suddenly it's a different time. People estimate, then the company puts out an official statement, and some companies report the fourth Thursday, other companies report this or that. So it's kind of crazy. It's hard to keep track of when earnings are coming up. And a lot of people publish a lot of calendars. A lot of those calendars are not accurate because they don't tell you if it's confirmed or estimated. But now here on RadarScreen, we have this ability. So this is the actual tool that like I said, came with the trading app store thing that you installed. Now this is showing the Dow Jones Industrial Average. So the thing is you can see this is the actual function here. It's these 4 columns, and it's going to allow you to sort on a lot of other companies, and to sort on things like the date. So you can see, oh, who's reporting, who's coming up next. And you can actually see, for example, you can sort them by that time frame. I also want to mention that you can also just look at them in simple days. Like, so you can see, for example, Netflix is reporting right now, and then you can see the company's reporting the next few days going forward. You can also see whether if it's, if the date is confirmed or not yet. You'll notice IBM and Johnson & Johnson was just reported. We don't have any data for them yet because they're just new. So now this is the Dow Jones Industrial Average. You can do a few other things. You can have obviously your own list of stocks. So now I'm going to start making changes to this. So actually what I'm going to do now is I am going to show you how to do some of these things with RadarScreen. I'm going to add a new page first. A lot of what we're going to be doing here, I'm going to be adding pages to RadarScreen. So say, for example, I want to look at the, first I'm going to remove all of these studies that are here. Just select them and remove them. And now what I want to do is I want to add a new study. And what you're going to actually see is the indicator. This is what you're actually going to see as a study. It's already added on the other one, but it's in this list. I'm going to hit the word N just to jump down the list. And I have here next earnings date RS. See, for some reason it's there twice because I installed it twice. And here it comes through. Now I don't have any stocks. So what I can now do is I can now go to data, add symbol list. Let's add the NASDAQ 100. It's going to bring in, and now it's going to start querying and grabbing that set of data. Okay. Now I shared with you guys, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm also going to add, while that's working in the background, I'm also going to add the S&P 500. It's going to take some time. This is probably going to be cranking in the background. So I want to just mention a few things just to be careful of when you work with RadarScreen. One of the things to remember is that when you first create a new page in RadarScreen, like I did down here, it always defaults to 5-minute intervals. And that is just a little bit tricky because a lot of the studies that I use daily values. Not a problem, just something to remember. Because if you look at if you're trying to do something with a moving average or something else, and you're like, why is the number weird? It might be looking at 5-minute candles. So what we want to do is I just click somewhere on the grid, I hit Control A, select all, then I just go to time frame daily, boom. And now I let it keep cranking away in the background. Okay, so now what I love about this is, as we go into earnings season, this is going to allow us to basically see the agenda of the S&P 500 going into earnings season. And, we can see who reports when, we can start anticipating, and there's going to be some other interesting tools that we can use to analyze these companies going in. So I want to just quickly go back to my PowerPoint and actually show you just kind of the agenda of how we're going to run through that. So I showed you how to activate the next EPS state function, how to download the ELD. So now we're working with EPS states and other indicators in RadarScreen. So this first section of our presentation is going to be about looking forward to companies before earnings season, before they report. And then secondly, we're going to want to know how to set alerts for companies after they report. Say a company has a great earnings report, it rips higher, and you want to be able to stay on top of it and catch it on a pullback. We're going to get to that, how to set different kinds of alerts. Then we're also going to show you how to scan a whole universe of stocks, because Scanner works differently than RadarScreen. I'm going to explain that. And finally, I'm going to show you some of the functionality in our web trading, which is also super useful during earnings season. Okay, so now it's pulling in these numbers, and we can do the same thing. We can click here on days, and we can see companies reporting in the S&P 500. You know, we can see tomorrow morning we have Chipotle and things like that. Now, also remember, this little green symbol link here is linked with the green on the chart. So whenever I click on one of these, it's going to pop up over here. Also, the earnings date, there's also information here where this pops up, and you can click on it, and it will tell you the number of days, and it will tell you whether or not it's confirmed. So this is another little tool here that can just kind of help you. So whenever you're like thinking about companies in terms of earnings, it's like, oh, how about, you know, JP Morgan? Boom, put in JP Morgan, it'll instantly figure out, oh, that's due in January, but it's not even confirmed yet, it's tentative. But you can see here that the past earnings were right there. So this is actually a show me on the chart showing the past earnings for the companies. Okay, so now I want to start showing some of the custom indicators that I'm sharing. And some of these indicators I have shared with people at different times, but I'm going to go ahead now and start adding them. The first one that I like to do is I like to look at fundamentals sometimes. We want to look at things like book value, price to book, price to sales, revenue growth, earnings growth, all of that. There's a lot of ways to find these on TradeStation. I've created some special tools to make it easier. So the first thing I'm going to do is this is going to make my radar screen a lot bigger. So in order to handle that, I'm going to maximize it across the workspace for the time being. And now I'm going to go to Studies, Add Study. Now you're going to notice here that now this comes up. Now we're going to start adding some of the indicators that I just shared with you guys in the ELD, the zip file that you imported. We're going to start drawing on them. So you should start, these are not built into TradeStation, but they should be there if you've successfully done the import. So let me go. The first one I want to show you, I call it BV to share 5-year growth. This shows companies that have been growing book value over time. Might sound kind of abstract, but it's actually a very effective way to find stocks that are long-term growth stocks when they've been growing book value. And you're going to see some of the top names on the list are your stocks like your Salesforce.coms or some of your big ones. The next one I like to have is price to book. Price to book is useful because it helps us actually see very often highly cyclical stocks that are trading at a discount because we're in a recession. Those are the kind of companies, financials, industrials, certain companies like that. Those are some of the companies that if things get better, that's the kind of the value play, the cyclical play that people might be targeting. The next one I like to look at is price to free cash flow, price to FCF. Free cash flow is a super useful thing for assessing the valuation of technology stocks. We have price to sales, which is also very useful for technology stocks and software stocks. Then we have just good old revenue growth, which is just a very meaningful way to see how much a company is growing. Revenue growth right here. You're going to see I have some of these other indicators here that these are things that I have in my TradeStation, but these are, I share just certain ones. A lot of them I have kind of various versions of the same indicators, and I've cleaned them up nicely for you guys. Price to earnings is another one that is obviously very commonly used by a lot of people. Price to earnings, and then finally EPS growth. So now I'm going to hit OK, and now boom, a whole bunch of new columns just popped up, and now they're going to start trickling through the TradeStation. Okay. So what I like about this is this allows me to go through and kind of assess where a company stand. I can look down the list and I can kind of see, oh, this one is interesting for, it's you can see the differences in how they trade based on valuation. And they're just a useful thing. I mean, right off the bat now, you can just look down and you can see these companies. I always like to look at revenue growth. It's just an interesting thing. And you can go down and quickly see, how these companies have actually been performing. And look at this company, look at a name like Las Vegas Sands, just revenue down almost 100%. And you can say, what are the companies that have the best revenue growth going in the earnings season? And then there's Etsy, for example. Oh, it's 8 days until they report. That's interesting. Maybe that's an opportunity. So the idea is you can go through, once you have these columns, established, you can then sort on them. Now, there's 2 other columns I want to add to show you guys. Go to Add Study. And one of the ones, all right, first, industry is always useful. It's just good to know. You might not know all these companies. Industry is included in TradeStation. It's a standard one. Another one that I share with you guys is called average options volume. This is actually in the ELD I just imported. Now, this is valuable to me because I like to look at companies that trade a lot of options. I've talked about this with various people over time. This is one of my kind of personal Dave Russell specials of how to kind of look at companies, because you do have these companies out there. Like, I mean, who's ever even heard of TFC? I don't even know what that company is. It's it's a regional bank. I mean, so now I just added this indicator and it's going to start populating in a second. I like to look at stocks that trade at least 10,000 contracts a day. That's going to give you more liquidity. It's going to tell you the names that are active. It's going to also make it possible, if you want to be looking for doing option strategies on these, it's going to make it easy to see the names that have decent volumes and names that don't. Now, this is populating slowly. It needs to query, but if you do this, it'll just pop up. So I'm going to create another page now. Will this be recorded? Yes. Does it work with TradeStation version 9.5? I am not sure. It may or may not. Very often the indicators will work, the workspaces will not. However, if you are installing it via the Trading App Store, it very well could work. I'm not entirely sure of that. See, they migrated me to 10 early, and I'm not always sure exactly how much it will work. So I cannot answer that. But I would still recommend to try it. There's a good chance the indicators will work. And that's the main thing I shared. I did not share a workspace because you're getting the workspace from the Trading App Store. Okay. So average options volume is going to trickle in. At least it should. I'm gonna let it go, and I'm gonna add new page. Okay. Boom. All right, now I want to show you some other cool indicators. So I'm going to go now, I'm going to add data. Let's just go ahead and add the S&P 500 again. We're going to make sure we set it to our daily, go to time frame, daily. Now what we're going to do is we're going to remove all these columns that we don't necessarily need. Although, maybe we want to have net. We'll have like net percentage change. We're going to go to data, go to studies, go to add study. And now what we're going to do is we're going to bring in some other cool functions. And these are things that are mostly built into TradeStation. So one of them is just going to be net. I should not have removed it, but net percentage change right here. We're going to add that. I like percent. The other net change is going to give you in points or dollars, which can be useful, but it can also be sometimes misleading when you're dealing with companies of radically different stock prices. Okay. Now, here's something I want to mention. Right now, we're looking at things called indicators. Realize, if you click on this thing up here, that there's multiple kinds of studies. There's also something called a show me, and that's what we're going to be using next. Now, just so you know, kind of philosophically, a show me is something that only shows when a certain event happens. An indicator is always plotted. So, for example, a stock always will have a 50-day moving average. There's always 50, well, if it has 50 days of history, if it's not an IPO or something. Every day there'll be a 50-day moving average. So that's an indicator. MACD every day it will have a value. But then say one day you have a new high or you have an outside candle. It will only show when that happens. And that's called a show me. So I want to just emphasize that some people might not appreciate what the difference is. So now we're looking at show me's. And there's a bunch of really cool show me's here that you can add. One of them, and let me actually just share this now. I want to go back to my PowerPoint really quickly to help you see this. Okay. So here's what we did. I already showed the fundamental indicators. Actually, Ichimoku Cloud, the first three things I want to show you, actually, let me go back, I forgot. All right, the first three things I'm going to show you are actually indicators. Now, these are indicators built into TradeStation. The first one is the Ichimoku Cloud. The next one is price channel. And the reason why I like these indicators, obviously, is because these always plot. Price channel. Okay. Now I'm going to go to the show me, sorry. And the first one I want to show you is C_doji, which means it's going to show you how long ago a doji occurred. It's pretty cool. A doji is a type of candlestick when there's a broad amount of space. You know, a stock, you know, opens at $5, goes to $6, goes to $4, closes at $5. That's a doji, and it has a big kind of spinning effect. I can show you that on a chart in a minute. And then another show me is this thing called breakout of X bar high. I'm gonna add that. Let me just make sure I'm not missing any. Outside bar is the next one I want to share. And you guys can play around with a lot of these. There are a lot of cool things that are available. These are the ones, you know, that I find most universally valuable. Okay. So now I can actually reduce this back down again, and we can actually see the chart. And this takes a second to build. Let's see if the average options populated over here. There we go. All right, I wanted to show you guys. This is the average options indicator. It took time to query. Probably being on Zoom doesn't make my connection any faster. I want to just emphasize this because I think this is like, it's super basic, but it's super useful in my opinion. You know, this just shows average options volume. It has a function built in where you can set it to highlight. If it's over 10,000 contracts, that's the default. It'll highlight in this teal color. And then you can go and right click on the column, go to studies, edit study, and then you can change how many days of history and the threshold for highlighting. This is just very useful because like it allows you to see, you know, if it's highlighted, then it's maybe something good for options. So you can look at like your list here, and then you can say, all right, you know, what are my stocks that have good, you know, revenue growth? You know, boom. Okay, here's Etsy, here's Fiserv. Those are active. What else do I have? I have, you know, Bristol Myers. That's active. And it allows me to quickly, Nvidia, good old Nvidia. We have, you know, Amazon, obviously. So right off the bat, we're seeing the big names, and then these kind of weird names like Cincinnati Financial, which is I think it's a small property and casualty company. You know, we can just zip right by those. The other cool thing we can do is we can click on this and say, you know what? If you don't make the cut, then hasta la vista. We'll just go here and we'll say, if you're not doing 10,000, I don't want to see you. See, so we're sorting by the column, which is going to go over here, click, and then hold down the shift and hit the down arrow or page down, select them all, and then delete, goodbye. And now going forward, I'm only looking at names that trade at least 10,000 a day. I just cut out, you know, like more than a quarter, probably more than 3/4 of the S&P 500. And now I can just create my own kind of custom list of these are the kind of interesting companies that maybe I want to be looking at now. And of course, if you're not interested in book value or something like that, you just don't use that column. But these are useful things to know going in. It's useful to know going into a company's earnings report, is it growing 50% or is it shrinking 20%? And having all that information right in front of you, being able to sort by it, can help you quickly track all these companies that are reporting in the next few weeks. All right, let's go back over here to my other new page. It populated once again. And you know, this is, to me, there's a few ways to look at it. A lot of people really like Ichimoku Cloud. And you know, it's something that I don't use that much, but it does give some interesting signals. The basic idea is when things are, you know, kind of above the cloud, you can then find certain signals. And I think it's interesting because, like, you know, it'll actually tell you, here's a new signal, for example, something, you know, would have fallen below the cloud. It's a potentially bearish signal, in this case on IBM. And if you look at it, you can actually add Ichimoku Cloud. If you want to see it on the chart, we can go to studies. We can then go to add studies. And this is going to show the similar thing that's in RadarScreen. It'll now show up on the chart. Ichimoku Cloud, add it. Then we get IBM. It's going to ask some questions there, and then this will then draw the cloud, and it's a new cross under the cloud. So what I like to do is I like to look for companies that are reporting in 5 to 10 days, and often just look for a rally into the earnings event. That's kind of one of my strategies, and I like to do it with options. I'm not really going to get into options a lot today, aside from showing you this cool functionality of companies that trade a lot of options. But that is something I like to look for. I like to look for stocks that melt higher into earnings, and then often have like a lot of profit taking. That strategy, I'm not sure if it works at this time, but there have been times in the past when you'll get a stock that has a strong earnings history, and it will just kind of melt up into earnings, and then afterwards you get the profit taking after the event. That's some of the stuff I like to look for. All right, now the other thing that's interesting here is our price channel. I like to just look at this for things that are it's a way of finding stocks that are in kind of short-term uptrends. And now you can also combine that with, for example, stocks that are in short-term uptrends that are maybe down on the session. So like International Paper, for example, this was one. Let's take a look at this one. Now these are all just results from today, so I'm not even, all right. So for example, Ichimoku Cloud, like today, a stock like International Paper, it actually was trending higher, brief pullback. Just this is the sort of thing I like to kind of look at. I mean, I'm sorry, price channel. But this is a similar sort of thing. The stock has an upward price channel, and then you can look at just short-term pullbacks. So the key thing is, and in other, sessions I've shared with you guys, how to basically, you can do things like, 1 week down, things like that. And if you're interested, if you check out some of our other webinars, we do share those in the past. But the key thing is being able to look at these and cross-reference and combine companies that might be reporting earnings soon. And then also you can bring in, for example, here you go to studies, go to the same thing, go to add study, next earnings date. And then you can see companies and you can plot their price performance, and then cross-reference that with things like how long until earnings come out and everything else. Okay. Another thing I want to show you, let me see if I can get this going. News, add study. Next, I go to indicators. Interesting. All right. Interesting question about adding float to radar. I'm going to take a look at your questions in a second, but let me just add next earnings date. Let it crank in the background. Boom. It's going to add that. It's going to crank away. Now, some of the other indicators here that are cool, I'm going to just move this over here. Boom. Okay, I showed you Ichimoku, price channel. All right, doji. This is kind of cool. This will show you stocks that had dojis recently. So very often, a doji, you'll get price action after the doji. So, I mean, I like to just look at it and occasionally see, the market today was, we're probably looking at a doji on the S&P when you look at the S&P right now. If I remember correctly, the way it traded today, not even a doji. But if you look at some of these names here that might have actually shown up as dojis, like for example, now we can drag this over and see them all. So I go over here to doji. What this means is it means these guys had dojis today. So if you actually look at the price action, AEE. So if you look at that, this is something of a doji. So sometimes I like to look for them when they have dojis like 2 to 3 days ago. Because very often after the doji, it's a potential reversal pattern. After the doji is when you get the move. So DAL, for example, this shows a doji, back here. And, again, it's just something you want to be looking at. It's not always going to give you clear signals, but it's something that it's cool to be able to look at such a broad number of companies, which RadarScreen lets you do. Next, breakout of an X bar of so many bars. So what this is going to do is this is going to show us when a stock moves above its range over a certain period of time. So this one, if we're going to click on it, right click on a study, go to studies, edit the study, and then this is going to go to a 14 candle period. So if the stock moves above its high of the last 14 candles, it will plot a value. And the value is actually, I believe, its last price. But the key thing is that you'll notice here that most of the companies do not have any value. So this actually shows that these were the companies in the S&P 500 today that broke out above their 14-day range. I'm going to take Ichimoku Cloud away because I think it's slowing down my chart. So for example, Chipotle hit a high above its previous range. I also want to check my studies here because it should be showing. If I go to studies, edit study, EPS postings, there we go. So see, these are show me's. This is the last earnings report on Chipotle, and they report tomorrow in the afternoon. So anyway, but this is also useful because sometimes it's interesting to look at companies that start breaking out of a period of the last 2 to 3 weeks. So again, this will just find those. And then the other thing I like is when companies have outside candles. I really like outside candles. I find them, outside days to be pretty useful patterns. And this will find those companies that generated outside days today, like this one. Vulcan Materials apparently had an outside day. So like, say you're like interested in the company, say it reports earnings in a week and a half, and you see a bullish outside day. That's the sort of thing that could be potentially viewed as a signal. PCAR. This company's been doing some interesting things as well. They make trucks. So anyway, these are some of the ways you can add these tools that are already built into TradeStation. Now, there are 2 other tools I want to share with you guys, and I think some of you guys, some of my other classes have seen these. And this is included in the ELD file that I shared. We're going to go to Studies. We're going to go to Add Study. And we're going to add 2 of my personal creations, MA Test and MA_streak. And I'm going to move them down. Now, what do we have here? With these, this is now thinking. Okay, so let's let it think. What these functions, what these tools do is, these will then find stocks that are straddling a moving average, which means, we don't have moving averages on this chart, but say we go to studies, we go to add study, and then we add like moving average, one line, right? Boom, moving average, one line. We're going to go and we're going to add the 50-day moving average. Boom. There it is. All right, now we look, Apple, 50-day moving average. And there you see today, its price was straddling the 50-day moving average. This is just kind of a useful thing to kind of be looking at over time. When you can use different moving averages. The nice thing is it color codes it very clearly to show you companies that are bullish. The 50-day is rising or falling. This is something I think is, one of my favorite things about this tool. And then you can obviously, right-click, Studies, edit MA, and then you can change the time period. The next thing is what I call MA streak. So I like to look at, I'm going to change this moving average here to the 10-day moving average, which I use a lot. I like the 10-day moving average as a short-term signal. It's not that different than the 8-day exponential moving average, which a lot of people use as well. I like the 10-day, but especially in the S&P, I find it very useful in the S&P 500. Anyway, so what this will do is this will tell us how many days the moving average is rising or falling. You'll notice for Apple, let's see, what are we looking at? We're looking at AMD. So let's look at Apple. So for Apple, it's going to show us that the 10-day moving average just turned positive. If you actually look at it here, it fell for a couple of days and then it turned positive. What I like about this is this can show us companies where the momentum is just starting to turn in a certain direction. That's what's interesting about this indicator. Now, this defaults to the 10-day, like it says here, 10, but you can right-click, you can go to Studies, and then you go to Edit, and then you can change which moving average you want to do. Now, I also want to show you guys a little bit of EasyLanguage, okay? So if you're on a study, you right-click on it, you go to Studies, Edit EasyLanguage. This will now bring up our coding environment. Now, some of you guys are probably much better at coding than myself, and there's definitely people in the company who are great at development. This is the code for MA streak. I'm not going to explain how it works. This is available to all of you. If you right-click and you go to Edit EasyLanguage for one of the indicators, and I share this, so this is all available to you. Now, what's interesting about this is if you're using it on the chart, you can then go and you can comment out this line, plot 2. Now, plot 2, you'll notice here is called period. And if I go back over to my thing, you'll notice this here is called period, right? So basically, it's just showing, 10-day, because I might have this indicator set up with different moving averages in RadarScreen, and I want to know wow, am I looking at the 10-day? Am I looking at the 20-day? So it actually plots that out. But if you add it to a chart, which you can do here, you can go to Studies, Add Study, MA Streak. It's going to default to 10. Now here it is. It's showing you here what the 10-day is rising and then it's falling, right? So basically, this can help you show that. In this case, you don't want 10 to be plotted. So what you want to do is you want to plot the 0 line, which is plot 3. So now you're going to go over here, and you're going to uncomment that, and you're going to comment this, and then hit F3. And now we'll go back to our chart, and now you'll see it looks different. Now you see the 0 line plotted, and then the 10 went away, and then it added these zeros. So this is just some of the ways you can edit EasyLanguage. I'm going to just remove this for now. I'm going to put it back the way it was. I just wanted to show that to you guys because there's a lot you can do just hacking around with the code we have, making small changes. It can be really useful. Before I move forward, I did want to answer this question. Is there a way I can add float to radar? I know it's available in Scanner, but I could not find a way to add float to RadarScreen. Well, since you asked, I will show you. If we go back to these indicators that I had here, and you right-click, you go to Studies, Edit EasyLanguage, you're going to notice that this uses a fundamental value. And basically, it uses this thing called fund value, and then it has essentially some ways that it handles the query. It queries the server, gets the data, and then it plots it out. In this case, I'm passing it to a variable and then passing it out. There is a list on the TradeStation website of all these fundamental values. It's a series of codes. And let me see if I can find that really quickly. Float should be in there. I don't have time to go through it, but I would encourage you to use this little snippet of code I have here and then play around using this link I'm going to share right now. Can I post the URL? I guess I'll post it again. I mean, maybe when you come into Zoom, you don't see the previous, but this is the ELD file, the second thing I just shared. Okay. All right. Let's go back to my agenda. Okay. So this is just a guide of what I just showed you. You know, Ichimoku Cloud, it shows trend, support, and resistance. Price channel can actually show you direction, and I find it useful for trend. And then things like the doji candlestick. Okay, for some reason, this is not advancing. My PowerPoint's kind of freaking out. 1 second. Why is this not? There we go. All right. Here we go. All right. All right, these are the ones that I showed you. Breakout of X bar high, outside bar, MA test, MA streak. So these are all things we want to use when we're looking at stocks now to try to anticipate, potential moves before earnings season. The next thing I want to show you is how do we use RadarScreen for after the fact? Very often earnings season is great because we get all these good events. You get a stock gapping higher and then it pulls back. And one of the hardest and most frustrating things is staying on top of it for the 2 to 3 to 4 weeks after earnings, and it pulls back and drifts lower. And there's a few ways to do it. Obviously, you can set price alerts, and that's very simple. But there are other things that we can do, and that's what I want to show you next. Okay. So as we can see here on our list of upcoming earnings, say for example, it's say we're sitting in the middle of November 9th or something like that, and we already had earnings from Apple and Google. They're all up here. They already reported, and maybe Apple's up and Google's down, and we want to set our price alerts for something. So that's what we want to look at next. So I'm going to go and create another page, add page blank, and I'm going to just add a list of stocks that maybe you guys would be wanting trading, like Tesla, Apple, Netflix, NVIDIA, Zoom Video, NEO. These are just some interesting stocks that maybe we're all watching. Throw Facebook on there as well. All right, going to select all, go to studies. I'm sorry, time frame, daily. All right, good. So I'm going to delete this interval. I'm going to keep last because that's going to be useful. I'm going to delete net change. I'm going to keep net change percent. I'm going to go to remove bid, ask, high, low, volume. Okay. All right. The first indicator I want to show you guys is we're going to go to studies. We're going to go to add study. Move average. I'm going to do one line, but there's multiple lines. So you could do move average, one line, two line, or three. In fact, I'll just do three to make it simple. Move it down. All right. Now, few ways to think about this. Right off the bat, you know, if Tesla pulls back under 400, you can set the alert on RadarScreen. You go to last, you double click on last, and then you set, let's set an alert, 400, and let's say if it goes like 470, I don't know. Boom. Now, Tesla reports, I think, tomorrow afternoon, so it's not even a good example. Good. And then with the next thing, don't forget, go to alerts, and then go to enable alert, alert continuously, and then okay. And now you'll notice when you look at it that there's a little orange dot there. And then when things start happening, it's going to start popping up, and it's going to bring up a little dialog box to tell you that it went above or below your threshold. So say, for example, you know, you have a stock that rallied, you know, and it jumped up, you know, and now you want to see, oh, let's see Zoom, and maybe we want to pull back and Zoom to 500. So we go to Zoom, go to last, you know, set your inputs, low alert, you want to set that to like 500, you know, alerts, enable alert, alert continuously, okay. And then I always save my desktop. I have a desktop where all I do is I keep alerts in it. It's a RadarScreen, and I have like 100 stocks I'm watching, and I just set my alerts there and I save it. That way I don't lose my levels if my computer crashes, whatever. I would recommend that you create a dedicated RadarScreen, one page. You can call it alerts or whatever, and then you're going to set your alerts in there, and don't mess with it. If you're going to do other studies, do it in another page. That way, if you crash it or whatever happens, you still have your space there where your key levels are there, and you can just go to them. So it's just a, you know, little piece of, you know, thing I've learned. It looks interesting here. Netflix is actually down. I think they had a weak subscriber number. Really not a surprise because they telegraphed this back in May. They basically said that they had pulled forward all their growth, and we emphasized that on Market Insights at the time. Okay. Net change, same thing. Oh, I want to have a day when, you know, Apple falls at least 2%, whatever. All right, double click on it. Let's go to this, you know, Apple, whatever. And then same thing, inputs, you're going to set to like minus, you know, minimum. Oh, I want to see a day when Apple crashes. I want to be a buyer. All right, minus 2%, same thing, alert, enable alert. You know, I like to set it continuously that way. You know, it flashes a lot. Okay. Moving averages. Now, this is something that you're going to go into here and you're going to notice studies, edit moving average, 3 lines for all symbol. You're going to input these different, you know, it has 4-day, 9-day, and 18 days. You can make it anything you want, of course. I'm just going to leave it alone for now. But the nice thing is you can just go to one of these and then you can set, like, for example, interesting. Look, I don't know if this works after hours, but if you go to study, you go to alert, enable alert continuously. Okay, and what it's going to show you is it's going to show, wait a second. I need to click on this. I go enable alert continuously. It should actually be showing. Oh, okay, so it shows up over here. But what will happen is if the alert, if it crosses that moving average, either it rally, if it goes above it or it falls below it, then it's going to trigger. In this case, you'll actually notice Netflix closed at 525. The fast moving average was at 532. So in this case, it's actually above. But if we can go here to slow and then we go to alert, enable alert continuously, this one, well, it's after hours, but the key thing is you can set these, and I like to do it for like the 50-day moving average or something like that. When a stock has been ripping, a stock like Zoom maybe, it goes flying up. And again, if we adjust this to like, you know, 50-day, okay, say we go over here and now we also adjust, we go to studies, edit, and then inputs. I'm going to set my slow to 50. Now, also one thing just to be careful of, if you go to general, sometimes you want to make sure that it it loads additional bars. So I like to just set this value to like 200 because sometimes it doesn't pull all the data that it should. Now you'll notice, like for example, for a stock like Zoom Video, it shows 406, which is exactly that 50-day moving average. So now if I turn this on and I set the alert, I go alert continuously, if Zoom pulls back to that 50-day, it's going to start lighting up for me. And not only does it light up, it will actually tell you if it's a bullish or bearish cross. It will know if the cross is above, if it's falling under or rising above. So that's something that, and it'll just pop up as a dialog box. So it's just something that's kind of cool. Okay. The next alert, I showed you net change, moving average, last. And the last one I want to just mention is another way you can achieve this is go to studies, add study, MA test. This is the one that I created. I showed you before, but it's also just kind of useful. If if Zoom crashes down to that level, it's going to then show here that it's it's going to plot the word 50 MA in that line. So the stock like Netflix, for example, tomorrow, I mean, it might gap under it. And then if you were to set for Netflix 50-day, that's going to trigger tomorrow. If Netflix remains where it is, because it's crossing from 525 down. Right now, the last on Netflix is 491. So it's going to cross through that line. It's going to trigger slow moving average cross. My tool, moving average test, would not be triggered because the moving average test looks at whether it's straddling the moving average. I like to use both because the thing is that maybe a stock crossed the moving average in the morning and now it's just sitting a little bit above it. Moving average test will detect that. MA cross will not. But say, for example, you want to set a series of things, and you could set something like the 20 and the 30-day moving average. That way, when the stock is pulling back in general, you're going to be alerted, and otherwise you don't even want to know about it. So you can use both of these to kind of help and then put them in the radar screen. Okay, one of you guys actually knows more than I. Put it on the 24-hour session. Okay, good. Question, where do we get the workspace? You know what, at the end of the webinar, sir, I'm going to go back and review that in case some people missed that beginning. It's really simple. All right. Next, I want to move on to Scanner. And this is something that is not in the workspace. So I'm going to just create a new workspace for this. This is not included in the Trading App Store tool. It is in the ELD file that I shared. So I'm going to go to my apps, and here they are. I'm going to click on Scanner. Now, the thing about Scanner is that it is married to your personal computer, the physical computer that's sitting on your desk. So there's no way I can share this with you guys, but I'm going to still show you how to make it work. I've shown Scanner to different people at different times, and I actually have one here that is called Upcoming Earnings, which I already showed, and I'm going to show you how to actually create it. Now this is going to use a slightly different indicator. Let's just call add, and let's just call it, I'm going to add an exclamation point, upcoming earnings. Now Scanner is similar to RadarScreen because it allows you to assess a lot of values for a lot of companies, but in some ways it's far more powerful because Scanner looks at the entire universe of stocks while RadarScreen requires that you give it a list of stocks. Now, some of those lists we have built in, like the S&P 500. However, you need to provide that list. RadarScreen will look at everything that exists that we have any data on. So I'm going to call this upcoming earnings. And now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select my universe. And in this case, I'm just going to say all stocks. You could do something like, all NASDAQ stocks or whatever. But in this case, all stocks. The next thing we want to do is, we hit next. And now we're going to start applying criteria. The first thing I like to do is to add this one called volume. And I go to volume average 10-day. And I'm going to set greater than 500,000. No commas, 500. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Next, I'm going to say market cap over $1 billion. And in this case, I'm going to go to I'm going to shrink this back down. I'm going to go to capitalization, market capitalization, greater than 1,000, because this is, it says it's in millions. So we're going to go over 1,000. 2, 3. Okay. Now there's another tool that I shared with you guys. This is the last indicator that is in the ELD file I shared earlier. And that is called # EPS days till post. So what we do here is, just so you see, you can see these are all pre-built values for scanner. And then we have indicators. Indicators are far slower. So you want to try and use things like volume average to reduce your universe before you apply an indicator, because indicators are slower. So here it is, EPS days till post, boom. And then what this is going to do is, this is going to basically find, how many days it's going to estimate based on the last earnings report. And it does a pretty good job. It might be off by a day or two, but it's going to give you a sense, these are the companies reporting in the next 30 days. And the thing is you're not able to use that next EPS like I shared earlier on RadarScreen. It does not work with scanner. The reason is because if you try and do the query on 2,000 stocks at once, scanner will time out. So we're just going to do that EPS days till post, days till earnings, and we're going to set it less than, let's say, 30. This value simply plots. I'm going to run it. What this does is this simply plots how many days until earnings. So smaller numbers mean we're closer to earnings. Remember, it is estimated. So what you might want to do is use RadarScreen. Use scanner, build a list of stocks. Then you can copy them out of scanner and put them into RadarScreen so you can then track them. That's just a way to do it. You can see it's doing some calculation here, and it's just it's going to be finished in a second. While that's running, I'm going to go back to where I started to just show you guys if you were late. All right, here we go. All right, if you go to the Market Insights blog, I'm gonna just share this with you, this link. Now you might have to. This is the link right now I'm putting in the chat. You might have to clear your cache. Sometimes for some browsers, it's been hitting this issue. So you might need to clear your cache for the trading app store to work. But you go to it, this is what you're going to basically see. You're going to see, it's going to look like, see, I got this error now from that. Anyway, I apologize for that. It's relatively simple. There's a button on the right that says install. You click on that. It asks you to log into TradeStation. You do your information. You basically consent to it and approve, the install. And then within an hour or two, you'll get an email saying it's activated. And once it's activated, you're going to go to apps. You're going to go to Trading App Store updates, and then you're going to actually see this thing called next earnings date. And you're going to go to launch, and you're going to basically get this workspace. Well, you're going to get this workspace. And then I added these are the things I added manually that are not part of the workspace. Well, not part of the original. And this MA streak, I added this. I'm going to remove it now. All right. Now let's go back to our scanner. And we can see, you can now click on this, and you're also going to get a similar set of companies. IBM, so you see it, they reported yesterday, here they all are. And you can just go down the list. In this case, it has negatives, but you can now just go down this list and find some of these companies, and you can apply a lot of the same logic. You could just say, I want to see all the companies reporting, in the next, 2 to 10 days. You just hold down this, you select it, hold down, shift or something like that. See, now I already have like 900 something companies. I'm going to just copy those. Let's go back over to my RadarScreen. Let's create a new page, add new page. Let's just bring them on in, hit Control V, paste them in. Now I'm going to do the same thing like I did before. Select all, time frame, daily. I'm going to remove a bunch of these columns that I find extraneous, like net change. Boom, boom, boom. Now I'm going to go to studies, add study. I'm going to go to next earnings date like I did before. Boom. And now it's going to do its crunching, and it's updating, it's querying, and it's starting to populate now. And then you can do the same sort of thing. You can say, let's add, for example, average options volume, boom, something like that. Add that. Now it's just going to sit there and scratch its head for a little while and do some analysis, but then we come back to it, it'll have some interesting data for us. So that's the way that you would basically do that. And I want to just emphasize it with scanner. Scanner is cool because, especially in this day and age, honestly, I wrote about NEO back at the end of last year. We've been writing a lot about a stock like NEO long before it became popular. We wrote about it on Market Insights. So there have been some of these companies that we didn't necessarily flag, and there's so many things you can do with Scanner. You can say, show me companies that are up at least 200% this year, that report earnings next week, and trade at least 10,000 options a day. Using the tools that I've just given you in this webinar, you can do something like that. You can start finding some of those companies. You can add things like MA tests to find companies that are maybe report earnings soon, or don't report earnings soon. Maybe you want to find companies that reported, they have at least 60 days of earnings. That means they already reported. That means maybe they've moved, and that's already happened. So you can say, show me companies that reported earnings basically a week ago. Same thing. You can set this scanner to EPS days still post greater than 40 or greater than 60 or something like that. There's a million ways you can do it, and it's not just a single way. I want to just show you the ways when you think creatively about data and the way that reality gets expressed in numbers. You can find a lot of powerful things using things like Scanner and like RadarScreen when you start to kind of mix and match and think between them. And these are the things I do to kind of generate stories and start identifying trends. All right, if we go back over now and look at this, we should see it's populating, it's coming in. It's still querying the options values, so I'm going to leave it alone for now. And I want to go back to my presentation and show you, where'd it go? So this is what I showed you about scanning. You also might want to look for things that trade, say, 10,000 contracts a day. Also, Scanner has built in, like one of you guys said, things like float. It has things like PE ratios and a bunch of those values built in. Those tools that are built into Scanner, those values are not directly available in RadarScreen, but you can scan. And if you go through some of those things in Scanner, let me just really quickly show you. If you want to say, show me all the companies that trade for less than 20 times earnings that report in the next 2 weeks, you can do it in Scanner. Say we just double click on this. You can then go and say, add a criteria. You can say valuation ratio. And then you can just come up with something like, PE, trailing 12 months, less than 30. I don't know. I don't use PE myself very much, but say you want to, boom, it'll just run, it'll do the same thing. So you can add all kinds of metrics, and I'd really encourage you to dig into Scanner to look at some of these things that it has available, because there's a huge amount of data available inside of Scanner. And we've done webinars on that, and we'll probably do some more. So these are just some other things you might want to do. You might want to add things like average option volumes and valuation metrics. Remember, those are for Scanner. The other things we showed you were RadarScreen. So we have these little logos just to remind you what we're looking at. Next, I want to show you something different, which I think is really exciting and cool, and I've started using myself, which is our web trading platform. So I'm actually now going to leave the TradeStation platform, which, you're allowed to. I don't like to, but you can do it sometimes. So we go over here to TradeStation, boom. And what you do is you basically go to log in, and then we go to Web Trading Live. And then when I do this, it's going to kick me off the other one. So just realize that when you log into Web Trading Live, it's going to boot you off the other one. It'll probably give me like an alarm sound in a second. See, do you want to kick you off? Yes. Boom. I don't know if you heard that, but it gave me this kind of noise. All right. So last thing I want to show you guys is this actually has some really cool news aggregation and analysis that is extra useful during earnings season. So this is what it looks like for me when I'm set up. The main thing I want to look at is news. I click on this just to make it simple. Let's just zoom the whole thing bigger, and boom, now we have this news channel available. So what does this give us? This gives us a series of channels. The first one I want to show you is if you go to this and you then go to trading ideas, earnings, for example, guidance, right? And you just start to kind of see there's going to be stuff in here right now. I'm sure they have stuff in here about, Netflix is probably in there and everything else. So this is just another place. It makes it really easy to go through and just review. So this is one I like. Another one I like, I go to news, and then I go to analyst ratings, all channels, upgrades, downgrades, analyst color, price targets, all that. This is really useful in earnings season because, people really figure out, this is when analysts actually do their homework. This is when you actually take the pulse of a company, when you look at their corporate earnings. So that's when you actually start to get sometimes the more meaningful analyst color. And on top of that, you get management telling how their business is doing. The next one is just in general, I like to look at, I go to general, and then I go to just tech, technology. It's always good to look at, what's happening in technology stocks. And there will be things that pop up in there that are, not going to be under the other categories. And then finally, I like to look at things always involving options. If I go to markets and then I go to options, you can see different things in here with people doing, different kinds of unusual, options trading and things like that. So this is always something worth, just checking on and studying. So those are the main things I wanted to cover. All right, folks, it was great to be with everyone. Wanted to just remind everyone that we do we're on the Market Insights blog on the TradeStation website. One other thing that I contribute to that some of you guys I do believe follow me on. Let me just very quickly find TradingView. We also publish a lot of chart analysis and things on TradingView. This is actually the link to it. TradingView is a whole other platform that can be linked to TradeStation. That's a whole other story for another webinar. But these do, some of these ideas we post on here at different times. So I wanted to kind of share that with everyone. So hope everyone has a great day. Thank you so much for joining me. This will be on the YouTube channel in a day. Actually, it should be on right away because I think we're streaming this live right now. And don't forget to check out Market Insights. Thanks so much, everybody.